right. Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today, we're tackling something that might seem a little...
Basic?
basic at first glance.
Got it.
Code comments, right?
Right.
But trust me,
Yeah.
there's a whole world of strategy
Absolutely.
and nuance hiding behind these
Oh, yeah.
seemingly simple lines of text.
A whole universe, I'd say.
We are diving deep today into a blog post from the folks over at Algocademy,
Okay.
all about using comments effectively.
Cool.
So you want to understand the power of these comments, right?
Yes.
Not just the how, but the why.
Right.
How they can make your code cleaner, easier to understand.
Yeah.
And yeah, even help you land a coding job.
Mm-hmm.
We'll uncover some secrets
Ooh, secrets.
of self-documenting code,
Nice.
the tools that can actually generate documentation from your comments,
Oh, wow.
and even how AI is changing the game.
That's the big one these days.
Oh, it's the big one, right?
Yeah.
So most developers learn the basics of comments pretty early on,
Right.
but rarely explore how to use them strategically to really kind of elevate their code.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those things that once you learn the basics of, you kind of just think you know it.
Yeah, and you never really go deeper.
Yeah, you just keep using them the same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to kick things off, this Algocademy post starts with those fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
The single line comments for those quick notes.
Yep.
The multi-line comments
Mm-hmm.
for those more expensive explanations.
Yeah, or just commenting out big chunks of code if you need to.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
For the stuff you would use to comment out large chunks of code while you're debugging.
Yep.
But we already know that, right?
We got that.
What we're really interested in are the techniques
The good stuff.
that turn comments into a superpower.
That's it, yeah.
So what's fascinating about these comments is how they bridge the gap
Yeah.
between what the code is doing technically,
The what?
right, the what, and the why behind those choices.
The why. That's the human element,
It
right?
is the human element,
Yeah.
which often gets lost in the sea of syntax.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the difference between reading sheet music and actually understanding the emotion a composer was trying to convey.
I like that. Yeah.
You can see the notes,
Mm-hmm.
but the comments are like
Yeah.
those performance notes.
Like the dynamics.
Yes.
Like play it with feeling, play it with an intensity,
Yes.
like a little bit of melancholy in this section.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the Algocademy post really hammers home the importance of writing comments
Yeah.
that are clear, concise, and focused on explaining why you made a particular decision rather than just stating what the code does.
I feel like that's a big mistake people make.
Oh, I see that all the time. It's just like,
They just say what the code does, and it's like,
yeah, no kidding. I can see that.
I can read,
I can read the code.
like you don't have to tell me what it says.
Exactly. So, for example,
Right.
if you're using a hash map in your code,
Yeah.
a comment that simply says, create a new hash map
Yeah.
is pretty useless.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. A more helpful comment
Yeah.
would explain why you chose a hash map.
Right.
Maybe because you needed O1 lookup time for efficiency.
And you're talking.
Right.
Yeah, because now
Now, anyone reading your code understands the reasoning.
the why.
The why, exactly.
Yeah.
Not just the action itself.
And that, I think that can really,
The game changer.
it's a game changer, especially when you're working with other people,
Yeah.
because then they understand your thought process.
And I remember they gave a fantastic example about how this can even play a role in coding interviews.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like imagine you're walking an interviewer through your code and you're able to articulate the why
Oh, yeah.
through well-written comments.
Yeah.
That shows that you have a deeper understanding
Exactly.
than just, being able to write code that works.
Yeah, it shows that you're thinking about the problem on a different level and you're able to communicate that effectively.
Exactly.
That's gold in any tech job.
Yeah, it's super valuable.
So that segues perfectly into the idea of comments serving as inline documentation.
Oh, yeah.
You can use them to create these clear explanations
Yeah.
for functions, classes, entire modules.
It's like you're building a user manual right into the code.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are these tools that can actually generate documentation from your comments.
Oh, yeah. I was geeking out when I read about this. Oh, yeah, they're becoming super popular, like JavaDoc for Java, Doxygen for a bunch of languages, JSDoc for JavaScript.
So wait, you're telling me
Yeah.
I can potentially avoid writing separate documentation?
Well, Not entirely avoid.
Not totally avoid, but it makes it so much easier.
Oh, way easier. It's a huge time saver.
Right.
Yeah, especially for larger projects.
And it keeps your documentation in sync with your code, so you're not constantly having to update two separate things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having a personal assistant who magically transforms your notes into a beautifully formatted report.
Okay, so we've talked about how comments can explain these complex decisions, act as documentation.
Yeah.
But the post also dives into how important they are during code reviews.
Code reviews, that's where those well-placed comments can really shine.
Yeah, because they help reviewers understand your thought process, right? They give context to your choices.
Yeah, and they lead to much more constructive feedback.
Yeah, you're not just like, hey, you did this wrong. You're like, here's why this might not be the best approach.
Exactly. It's more about collaboration and learning.
Totally. I had this experience a while back.
Yeah.
Where I was working on this ridiculously complex feature. Okay, and during the code review, a senior dev left some incredibly helpful comments.
Nice.
They weren't just pointing out errors.
Yeah.
They were explaining the potential consequences.
Right. Like, hey, if you do this, then this might happen.
Exactly. And suggesting better approaches.
It's like a mentor right there in your code editor.
It was a game changer.
I bet.
It made me realize that code reviews aren't just about catching bugs.
No.
They're opportunities for learning and collaboration.
Yeah, totally. When you have those good conversations in the comments, that's when the real magic happens.
So well-written comments facilitate a more meaningful dialogue during code reviews, ultimately leading to better code quality.
Better code. Happier team.
So to sum up, we've uncovered how comments can illuminate complex logic, serve as documentation, and elevate code reviews.
Make code reviews less painful.
It's amazing how these little snippets of text
I know, right?
Can have such a huge impact.
They're small, but mighty.
On the entire development process.
Absolutely.
But what about the future?
Ooh, the future.
The Algocademy post hinted at some pretty radical trends on the horizon.
Oh, yeah. Things are getting wild.
Oh, yeah. Things are getting really interesting.
We should talk about that.
We should definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into that after a quick break.
Sounds good. We were talking about the future of commenting.
Yeah.
And some of those trends that are starting to emerge.
Right.
One that really caught my eye.
Yeah.
Is this idea of interactive documentation.
Oh, yeah. That's the one where you can actually run code examples.
Yes.
Right from the comments.
Right in the documentation.
Right.
It's like having a built-in code playground.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
It would totally change how we learn from documentation.
I know, right?
You wouldn't have to be switching back and forth between the docs and your code editor.
Exactly.
You'd be able to just like see it in action right there.
Test things out.
Right.
See how it works.
It would make the learning curve so much smoother.
Oh, absolutely.
For new developers.
Especially for new developers.
Even for experienced devs exploring a new library or framework.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's the whole AI-assisted commenting thing.
Oh, yeah. That one's a big one.
That one kind of blows my mind.
It's a little scary, too.
It is a little scary.
Yeah.
Do you think AI could actually write better comments than humans?
I mean, it's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
I have to admit, it makes me a little nervous, too.
Yeah.
These AI tools are getting so sophisticated.
Yeah.
And they have the potential to automate so much of the documentation process.
But wouldn't that kind of defeat the purpose of comments?
That's the question.
Aren't they supposed to reflect the human thought process behind the code?
You're hitting on a crucial point.
Yeah.
AI can be a powerful tool for generating basic descriptions of what the code is doing.
Yeah.
But it can't replicate that deeper understanding of the why behind the choices a developer made. Like, why did you choose this algorithm?
Exactly.
AI can't really grasp that yet.
So it's like having an AI assistant that can handle the grunt work.
Right, like the more tedious parts of documentation.
But the developer still needs to be the one steering the ship, providing those insights.
The human element is still essential.
Okay, that makes me feel a bit better about the robot takeover.
Yeah, I think we're still safe for now.
But what about this living documentation concept?
Living documentation.
That one sounded pretty wild, too.
That's where systems automatically keep comments and documentation in sync with the code.
So no more outdated documentation.
Exactly.
Imagine a world.
I know, it's a beautiful dream.
Where the docs evolve alongside the code base.
It's like magic.
Always reflecting the latest changes in functionality.
It sounds too good to be true, but it's becoming a reality.
How does that even work?
Well, there are different approaches.
Yeah.
But a lot of tools leverage metadata tags or annotations within the code itself. These tags act as markers that connect specific code elements to their corresponding documentation sections.
So when you update the code,
Yeah.
those tags ensure that the documentation updates accordingly.
Exactly. It's like having an invisible thread that connects your code and documentation,
That's incredible.
keeping them in perfect harmony.
No more spending hours trying to update documentation.
I know, right?
After making a bunch of changes.
It's a huge time saver.
It's a game changer.
Especially for large, complex projects.
Yeah, where keeping documentation up to date can be a constant headache.
Oh, yeah. A nightmare.
So we've got interactive documentation. We've got AI assistance.
Yep.
And we've got living documentation.
The future is looking pretty bright.
The future of commenting sounds pretty futuristic.
It's an exciting time to be a developer.
It really is.
But even with all these advancements, there's one concept that I think is really important.
Let me guess, self-documenting code. It's the idea that the code itself should be so clear and well-structured.
Right, so readable.
That it needs minimal comments to be understood.
Ideally, the code should speak for itself.
Okay, but how do you actually achieve that?
Well, it takes a lot of discipline and attention to detail.
Yeah.
But the post talks about adhering to clean code principles.
Okay.
Like using descriptive names for variables, functions, and classes.
So instead of naming a variable X, you'd call it something like customer name.
Exactly. So it's immediately clear what it represents.
And breaking down complex functions into smaller, more focused ones?
Each with a single responsibility.
Right, the single responsibility principle.
That's a good one.
So if each piece of code has a clear purpose and is named descriptively, it becomes more like reading plain English.
Exactly.
Like you don't need a decoder ring to figure out what's going on.
And by following established design patterns and writing code that's modular and well-organized, you can create a system that's inherently more transparent.
So comments become more like subtle hints or guides.
Yeah, like little breadcrumbs.
Rather than crutches to decipher cryptic code.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see the appeal of self-documenting code.
It's elegant.
It's like the difference between a dense textbook and a well-written novel.
I like that analogy.
One requires a lot of effort to decipher.
You have to really work at it.
The other draws you in with its clarity and elegance.
It's a joy to read.
It's a beautiful analogy.
It's about striving for code that's not just functional, but also beautiful and expressive.
And when you achieve that, the comments become like those little annotations in the margins of a classic novel.
Ooh, like that.
Adding depth and context.
Without obscuring the main narrative.
Okay, so we've explored the future of commenting.
The wild world of AI and interactive docs.
With its mind-blowing possibilities.
It's a lot to take in.
And we've touched on the ideal of self-documenting code.
The holy grail of coding.
But the Algo Academy post also delved into a topic that's often overlooked.
Oh, really? What's that?
How commenting practices can vary.
Okay.
Depending on the programming paradigm you're using.
Right, because not everyone approaches code in the same way.
Right, like object-oriented programming versus functional programming.
They're totally different philosophies.
They have totally different philosophies.
Yeah.
In object-oriented programming,
your
comments might focus on explaining the roles and interactions
of classes and objects, how they fit into the overall system architecture.
While in functional programming,
Yeah.
the emphasis might be on explaining how data is transformed.
Through a series of pure functions.
Right.
You want to clarify those data transformations.
Yeah.
And the immutability aspect.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to commenting.
Exactly.
You need to adapt your style to the specific paradigm you're working with.
It's about being mindful of the context.
Yeah.
And choosing the commenting style that best conveys the intent.
And the logic of the code.
It's like speaking different languages.
There's like a hidden language within the code.
Yeah.
A way to communicate not just with the machine.
But with other developers.
But with other developers who are familiar with that way of thinking.
Exactly.
This deep dive is really making me appreciate the subtle art of commenting.
It's an art form, for sure.
It's a form of technical communication that's often overlooked.
But it's so essential.
It's absolutely essential for creating maintainable, collaborative,
and ultimately successful software projects.
And the Algo Academy post didn't just focus on individual developers.
No.
They also highlighted the importance of commenting in open source projects.
Oh, yeah, open source.
Which is a whole other beast.
It's a whole different ballgame.
It's like you're contributing to this giant collective code base.
Yeah.
And your comments are the bridge that connects your work to the rest of the community.
You want your contributions to be welcomed and easily integrated.
Right.
You don't want to create confusion or headaches for the maintainers.
So in an open source environment, it's even more important to be consistent
with the project's coding style.
Explain any workarounds clearly.
And even link to relevant issues or external resources.
It's about being a good citizen of the open source community.
Absolutely.
And contributing in a way that's both helpful and sustainable.
Leaving the code base better than you found it.
Okay, so we've explored the future of commenting.
The mind-bending possibility.
The nuances of different programming paradigms.
Different strokes for different folks.
And the unique challenges of open source.
A whole world of commenting out there.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It really has.
But I think there's one last frontier we need to conquer.
Oh, and what's that?
The Algo Academy post briefly mentioned the ethical considerations surrounding AI-generated comments.
Yes, the ethical implications.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's a really important topic.
Yeah.
And one that's just starting to be explored.
Right.
As AI becomes more prevalent in code generation and documentation, we need to be mindful of potential biases.
Right.
And unintended consequences.
Like if an AI is trained on a data set of code that contains biased or discriminatory language, could it perpetuate those biases?
In the comments it generates. That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that the AI tools we use are trained on diverse and representative data sets.
Right, yeah.
And that they're designed to promote fairness and inclusivity.
And what about the potential for plagiarism?
Oh, that's another tricky one.
If an AI is generating comments based on existing code, how do we ensure that it's not simply copying
or paraphrasing without proper attribution? We need clear guidelines. And best practices for using AI in code commenting. Just like we have for other forms of academic and professional writing.
Right.
Transparency and accountability are key.
So it's not just about the technical aspects of AI-generated comments.
That's about the ethics.
It's about ensuring that they're used ethically.
Responsibly.
And responsibly.
We need to think about the bigger picture.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation.
I've really enjoyed this discussion.
I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation.
For the humble code comment.
For the power and complexity of code comments.
They're more than just little notes.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious to get your take on one more thing.
I'm all ears.
The Algo Academy post emphasized the importance of writing comments that are not only informative, but also engaging.
Oh, interesting.
And enjoyable to read.
Make them fun.
Do you have any tips?
Yeah, how do you do that?
On how to achieve that?
That's a great question.
Because writing engaging technical documentation can be a challenge.
It can be dry.
It can be really dry.
Yeah.
But there are definitely ways to make it more enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely.
For the reader.
One tip is to use clear and concise language.
Okay.
Avoiding jargon or overly technical terms whenever possible.
Right, for a human.
Exactly.
Not a machine.
Another tip is to break up long blocks of text.
Yeah, those walls of text.
With headings, bullet points.
Visual aids.
Visual aids like diagrams or code snippets.
And don't be afraid to inject a bit of personality or humor.
Oh, yeah. A little bit of humor goes a long way.
A well-placed anecdote.
Keeps things interesting.
Or a touch of wit.
Can make your comments more memorable.
And relatable.
You want people to actually enjoy reading your comments.
It's like you're turning technical writing into a form of storytelling.
Exactly.
And just like with any good story, you want to capture the reader's attention.
Keep them engaged.
And leave them with a lasting impression.
Make them want to come back for more.
This deep dive has been a revelation.
I'm glad you found it helpful.
I used to think of comments as a necessary chore.
I know, right?
Hey, we've all been there.
But now I'm starting to see them as an opportunity to elevate my code.
To really take your code to the next level.
And share my insights with the world.
To make a difference.
It's a shift in perspective.
It's a whole new way of thinking about code. Seeing comments not as a burden.
But as a valuable tool.
But as a valuable tool for communication, collaboration, and knowledge sharing.
It's about building a better coding community.
It's like we've unlocked the secret language of code.
We've cracked the code.
And now we can use it to create software that's not only functional,
but also elegant.
But also elegant expressive,
and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Well said.
Thanks.
It's an exciting time to be a developer.
It really is.
And I'm eager to see how the art of commenting continues to evolve.
Me too. It's going to be interesting to see where things go from here.
It's funny, I used to think of comments as like this thing I had to do, to get through code reviews or appease my professors in college. But after this deep dive, my whole perspective has shifted.
I get that. It's like you've discovered a hidden dimension within the code.
Exactly. Comments are like this secret language.
It's true.
That allows us to communicate not just with the machine, but with other developers.
Other humans.
And even with our future selves.
Yeah, future you will thank you.
Oh, yeah, future me is going to be so happy.
For those comments.
Right. Like, why did I do that? Oh, that's right, because I left a comment explaining it.
Yeah, it's like leaving little notes for yourself.
I love that idea of comments as a form of storytelling.
Yeah.
It's about painting a picture for the reader.
Giving them the full context.
Not just listing a bunch of facts.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today.
We have. It's been wonderful.
We've explored those fundamentals of commenting.
The basics.
The nuances of different programming paradigms.
Different ways of thinking.
The power of self-documenting code.
Yes, the ideal.
And even the ethical considerations of AI-generated comments.
That's a big one.
It really is.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Ooh, a challenge.
Next time you're writing code, don't just focus on getting it to work.
Right. Go beyond the surface.
Take a moment to reflect on the why behind your decisions.
Why did you choose this approach?
Why did you structure the code this way?
Asking the important questions.
Then use your comments to share those insights.
Let people know what's going on in your head.
Explain your thought process, your rationale, your creative spark.
Turn those comments into little nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, exactly.
That others can learn from.
It's about transforming those comments from mere explanations.
Right.
Into valuable pieces of knowledge that can be shared and passed on.
Building a knowledge base.
It's like planting these seeds of understanding.
Yeah, I like that.
That can blossom into a richer and more collaborative coding culture.
It's about paying it forward.
And who knows? Your comments might even inspire the next generation of developers.
That would be awesome.
What a thought. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into this fascinating world of code comments,
a world we don't often think about,
I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Remember that code is more than just a set of instructions for a machine.
It's more than just ones and zeros.
It's a form of human expression, a way to solve problems, create something beautiful.
And meaningful.
And comments are the bridge that connect that human element to the technical world of code.
They humanize the code.
Exactly. So, let's all strive to become master commenters.
Level up your commenting game.
Crafting comments that are clear, concise, insightful.
And maybe even a little bit poetic.
Beautifully said. And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this exploration into the art and science of code comments,
the hidden world of code comments,
be sure to subscribe and share it with anyone who might benefit from this knowledge.
Spread the word.
Until next time, happy coding.